Do you think you're a good person? Polite? Patient? Empathetic? Maybe you're even proud of how well you control your emotions, how little conflict you create. But what if I told you that this image, the calm, kind version of you, is only half the story? And worse, what if it's not really you at all? Because behind every polished persona is something much older, much wilder, a force you've buried. You weren't born tame. You were trained to be. And what you pushed down, the anger, the desire, the judgment, didn't disappear. It simply went underground, into what Carl Jung called the shadow. This shadow isn't a poetic metaphor. It's real. And the more you deny it, the more it controls you from beneath. You've tried to be good, but something inside you doesn't care about good. It wants to be seen, and if you don't face it, it will find its own way out. Often, when it's too late to stop. If you've ever wondered why you sabotage your own success, why you judge others so harshly, or why you feel like you're living behind a mask, then subscribe now. Because what I'm about to reveal about the shadow will expose the hidden forces that have been controlling your life from the darkness. So to understand why this shadow holds such power, we have to go back. Not to your last mistake, but to your first mask, the one you stitched together with silence, just to be accepted. To understand the shadow, we need to go back, not to your last mistake, but to your first mask, not to adulthood, but to childhood. Imagine yourself as a child, unfiltered, untamed, fully alive. You laugh when you're happy. You scream when you're angry. You cry when you're hurt. There's no filter, only truth. But then, it begins. The world starts to shape you. A parent says, "Stop crying." A teacher warns, "That's not how good boys behave." Someone you admire says, "Be quiet. Be polite. Be nice." And slowly, you learn. Certain feelings are not welcome. Certain impulses are too much. You start to hide. You start to edit. You start to perform. Piece by piece, you construct a version of yourself that fits. This is what Jung called the persona, your social mask. The version of you that others find acceptable. But every time you were told to behave, a part of you was boxed and buried. Your anger, your curiosity, your desire, your truth, not erased, just exiled. And what happens to all those buried parts? They form what Jung called the shadow. But the shadow doesn't just bury what's dark. It buries what was once radiant. Until someone told you it was wrong. Your courage, your boldness, your natural power. Parts of you that were shamed, not because they were wrong, but because they made others uncomfortable. In today's world, the pressure to suppress begins even earlier. Children are corrected not just by parents, but by teachers, classmates, strangers online. A single outburst becomes a viral moment. A moment of truth becomes a moment of shame. So you learn even faster how to disappear, how to shrink, how to smile when you're hurting, how to be liked instead of being real. But here's the truth. What you bury doesn't die. It waits. The shadow grows in silence. With every lie you tell to keep the peace. With every truth you silence to be loved. With every emotion you swallow to avoid conflict. And the more you repress, the more control it gains. Jung understood this deeply. We are not only what we show the world, we are also what we hide from ourselves. And what you hide doesn't stay hidden forever. This is why you sometimes explode over small things. Why you judge others with strange intensity. Why you sabotage what matters most. It's not random. It's not fate. It's the shadow breaking through the cracks. The parts of you tried to kill. Now, trying to live. So, no, you weren't born tame. You were taught to be. And everything you left behind, all that energy, intensity, and emotion is still in you, waiting. The question is not whether you have a shadow. You do. The question is, what happens when it starts to surface? Because it will. And when the mask cracks, those buried parts return. Sometimes as sabotage, sometimes as cruelty, sometimes as a version of you you don't even recognize. But remember this, the shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be seen. But what happens when that shadow is given space? What happens when it's no longer repressed but unleashed? That's when it stops whispering and starts devouring. We tell ourselves that evil wears a mask, sharp teeth, cold eyes, blood on its hands. But sometimes, evil wears a smile and lives inside people who think they're kind. This belief comforts us. It draws a clean line between us and them, between the good and the corrupt, between the civilized and the savage. But that line is a lie. The truth is more unsettling. Evil is not a personality trait. It is a potential, one that lives in all of us. And all it takes is the right conditions. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo set out to study the psychology of authority. He selected a group of ordinary college students, mentally stable, with no criminal record. They were randomly assigned to two roles, guards and prisoners. What followed became one of the most disturbing experiments in modern psychology. Within days, the students playing guards began to show signs of cruelty. They deprived prisoners of sleep. They humiliated them. They issued punishments, not out of duty, but enjoyment. And the prisoners, they broke down. Emotionally, psychologically. The study, known as the Stanford Prison experiment, we had to be shut down after just 6 days. Zimbardo's conclusion was chilling given enough power, anonymity, and lack of accountability. Even good people can do terrible things. He called this the Lucifer effect, the transformation of the average person into an agent of cruelty. But this wasn't a sudden mutation. It was the shadow finally given room to breathe. The mask of civility collapsed, and what emerged was the part of the psyche that had long been suppressed, the part that wanted to dominate, punish, and control. This wasn't an anomaly. It was a mirror. And if you think it only happens in labs or prisons, look closer. Watch how quickly a crowd online can turn cruel. Look at how easily people dehumanize others behind a screen. Or how a workplace hierarchy can enable psychological violence as long as it is masked by policies and titles. What changes is not the person. What changes is the permission. So, ask yourself, is evil really rare? Or is it simply given rare permission? The answer lies in understanding that the shadow does not need an invitation. It only needs a crack. It needs you to look away, to say, "I would never," to believe that you're the exception. Because that belief, that illusion of moral immunity, is exactly what gives the shadow its freedom. The signs of shadow control are all around us and within us. What I'm about to show you next will reveal how to recognize when your own shadow is pulling the strings. Subscribe and stay with me, because learning to spot these patterns could be the difference between unconscious destruction and conscious self-mastery. When we repress certain desires, judgments, or instincts for too long, they begin to distort. They become disowned. And anything we disown becomes more dangerous. Not because it is evil by nature, but because it has been exiled from the light. So when it returns, it does not return with grace. It returns like a wound that was never allowed to heal, like a voice that was never heard, like a force that was never acknowledged. The shadow does not erupt. It seeps, quietly, incrementally, until cruelty no longer feels foreign, just justified. This is why Jung warned us so urgently. The parts of ourselves we refuse to face become the forces that quietly shape our lives. You don't need to commit atrocities to be under its influence. You just need to deny what lives inside you. Because the shadow, left unchecked, doesn't just act through dictators and prison guards. It whispers through your tone. It hides in your judgment. It moves through your silence when you should speak. And it speaks when you should pause. The scariest part isn't that the shadow exists. It's that it's acting through you. Right now. Quietly. Invisibly. Unless you learn to see the signs. The shadow does not announce itself. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because when something inside you is working against your best interests without your awareness, it's not sabotage. It's possession. So how do you know when the shadow is in control? The signs are subtle, but they're always there. Start with your emotional triggers. Have you ever felt a disproportionate irritation towards someone, not because of what they did, but because of what they represent? That person who's bold and unapologetic. That coworker who always speaks up. That friend who seems perfectly comfortable being seen. What if the resentment isn't about them, but about a part of you that you've buried. Jung called this projection when we attribute to others what we cannot face in ourselves. Often, what we judge harshly in others is exactly what we've repressed within. So when you feel intense judgment, ask yourself, what part of me am I refusing to acknowledge? Then there's self-sabotage. You get close to something, you want a relationship, a promotion, a fresh start, and then, somehow, you stall. You delay. You overthink. You create conflict out of nowhere. And you call it bad timing or bad luck. But it's the shadow. Because the shadow doesn't want you to evolve. Evolution requires confrontation. And it will do anything to keep you in the safety of your familiar patterns, even if those patterns are painful. Now, consider the internal voice. That quiet but constant stream of criticism. You're not ready. You'll embarrass yourself. Who do you think you are? You may think that voice is protecting you. It's not. It's managing you on behalf of your unresolved past. This is the shadow's language: doubt, hesitation, inner judgment. Even your so-called virtue can be a disguise. The person who prides themselves on being endlessly patient may be harboring unexpressed rage. The one who always plays the peacemaker might actually be terrified of conflict. This is what we call false virtue, when goodness is not a choice, but a defense mechanism. And the tighter you cling to that image of being calm, kind, in control, the more your shadow sharpens its teeth in the dark. 3 cues often reveal shadow possession. First, false virtue, when your moral identity becomes a shield that hides your discomfort with darker truths. Second, emotional overreaction, when your response is too intense for the situation. Anger, jealousy, fear that arrives like a storm. Third, patterns of delay, when you always find a reason to wait, postpone, or step back from the moment you were meant to rise. And today, these patterns are amplified. You scroll through curated images online. You feel envy, but call it disinterest. You compare yourself, then pretend you're above comparison. You tell yourself you're kind, but secretly celebrate when someone more successful stumbles. You downplay your ambition, while secretly craving validation. These contradictions are not flaws. They're doorways. They reveal the parts of you still trying to belong, still trying to be good, still trying to keep the mask from slipping. But here's the hard truth. The more you cling to the light, the more power the shadow has in the dark. The shadow is not just what's ugly. It's what's true, but not yet accepted. And until you accept it, you will never truly know who you are. So now you see the signs. But awareness isn't enough. The shadow won't leave just because you've noticed it. It demands to be faced. By now, if you understand what the shadow is and how it quietly sabotages your thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. But knowing it exists is not enough. The shadow doesn't dissolve with awareness. It demands engagement. So the question becomes, how do you face it without being consumed by it? This is the practice of shadow work. And it is not spiritual fluff. It is psychological excavation. The first step is honesty. Radical honesty. Ask yourself the question. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding, what part of me do I not want to admit exists? Sit with that question and let it disturb you. Start with a pen and paper. No filters. No performance. Write what you would never say out loud. The jealousy, the resentment, the quiet desire to hurt someone who once hurt you. Not to justify it, not to act on it, but to name it. Because what you name loses its power over you. This is where shadow journaling begins. Write freely, without judgment. And as you write, you may start to feel resistance, a tightening in the chest, a voice that says, "This is too much." That voice is not your conscience. It is your conditioning. It is the persona trying to protect itself from the truth. Let it crack and keep writing. Next, observe your emotional triggers. Who irritates you? What behaviors set you off? What qualities in others make you feel inferior or superior? Your reactions reveal your repressions. If you're constantly drawn to conflict, you may be avoiding your own passivity. If you resent people who speak boldly, you may have silenced your own voice for too long. Every trigger is a message, not about the world, but about you. And then there is a deeper method, one Jung called active imagination. It is not mere visualization. It is a dialogue. You close your eyes and meet the shadow inside. You give it a face, a form, a voice, and you speak. Ask it what it wants. Ask it why it hides. Ask it what it remembers that you have forgotten. Sometimes it will show you anger. Sometimes fear. Sometimes it will surprise you by revealing strength. Because the shadow is not just a wound. It is also an exiled genius. It holds your courage, your creativity, your primal intuition, all the qualities you once needed to survive, but were told were too much. To go even further, pay attention to your dreams. The unconscious speaks in symbols, the recurring figures, the strange emotions, the landscapes that make no rational sense. These are not random. They are messages, encoded, honest, unfiltered. Track your dreams. Write them down. Ask yourself, what part of me is trying to speak through this image? And as you go deeper, you will begin to meet the archetypes in your shadow. The inner rebel who fights back after years of being silenced. The inner predator who seeks power after feeling powerless. The abandoned child who learned to survive by not needing anyone. Each one holds a key, not to your darkness, but to your buried vitality. The goal is not to eliminate these parts. It is to integrate them. Say to them, I see you. I hear you. You are part of me, but you do not control me. This is not submission. This is self-leadership. And this work changes everything. Not because you become better, but because you become whole. Because once you stop running from your shadow, once you sit with it, learn from it, integrate it, something shifts. You stop performing. You stop projecting. You stop fearing your own depth. And you begin to live from a place far more powerful than purity. And when the war inside you begins to quiet, that's when something ancient returns. Not your perfection, but your presence. You begin to live from wholeness. By now, you understand something most people never realize. That true freedom, the kind that endures, is not found in perfection. It is found in integration. You do not become powerful by silencing the dark. You become powerful by making peace with it, because the parts of yourself you once rejected, the rage, the envy, the fear, the hunger, are not flaws to be erased. They are energies, distorted by shame, twisted by suppression, but vital all the same. The work is not to become pure. It is to become whole. And this wholeness is not neat. It is not clean. It is not the curated version of you that fits in polite conversation. It is raw. It is real. It is you without performance. But here's the catch. Many people, in the name of healing, create a second mask, a spiritual one. They meditate. They journal. They speak of peace, of light, of non-attachment. But deep beneath that light, they are still at war with themselves. This is what we call spiritual bypassing, using spiritual language to avoid emotional truth. They say, "I've transcended anger," but their smile is tight. Their voice is brittle, and their body holds tension like a clenched fist. They say, "I've let go of ego," but they can't tolerate being wrong. They say, "It's all love," but inside, they are still hiding from their shadow. This is not healing. This is avoidance with better branding. Real inner work does not make you invincible. It makes you honest. It reveals that beneath the surface of your pride, there is pain. And beneath the pain, there is truth. In Eastern traditions, like Zen and Taoism, wholeness is not about conquering contradiction. It is about embracing it. The Tao teaches that light and dark are not enemies. They are complementary forces. Each one makes the other possible. Just like in nature, day becomes night. Winter becomes spring. Exhale follows inhale. To deny one side of yourself is to live only half a life. Carl Jung said it clearly. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is not your flaw. It is your frontier. It is the part of your soul you tried to exile, but it held the map back to yourself. And the moment you turn toward it, not with fear, but with curiosity, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You stop blaming the world. You stop running. Because you finally understand nothing inside you is trying to destroy you. It is trying to be heard, to be healed, to be reintegrated. And when that reintegration happens, your life begins to move differently. You speak more clearly. You choose more freely. You stop needing to control everything because you are no longer at war with yourself. This is what real strength feels like. Not dominance, not purity, but presence. And yes, this is ongoing work. The shadow does not disappear. It returns. It tests. It asks again and again, will you forget me? And your task is to remain awake. To remain in relationship with all parts of you, not just the parts that get applause, because your greatest danger has never been darkness. It has always been denial. And now you know the path to freedom doesn't go around your darkness. It goes through it. Through the ache. Through the shame. Through every part of you once disowned just to belong. You've spent so much of your life trying to be good, trying to be accepted, trying to stay in the light. But freedom doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being whole. If today's message stirred something in you, subscribe now, because this channel is your mirror. And this work, it starts today. If today's message stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Start small. Start honest. Ask yourself, what part of me do I judge the most? Write it down. No filter. No edits. Because if you can name it, you can tame it. This is where real strength begins. Not in denial, but in self-ownership. And if you're ready to go deeper, you're not alone. This channel is your mirror. And this work, it starts now. The darkness is not your enemy. It's your invitation. Take it.